I don't know if you know how green screens work, but there's two rules. They have to be well lit and they have to be equally spaced. So I decided to do neither of those things. So let's see how this one goes. Inside Out, released in June 2015, is a movie that personifies 5 emotions inside the main character Riley's head. Sadness, joy, disgust, fear, and anger. It's a great movie that more or less accurately represents the amygdala, the emotional part of the brain. But how do the premises of the film hold up in the real world of science? The concept of mixed emotions comes up later in the film, as sadness and joy share a touching moment that produces a memory that's both happy and sad. This marks the start of a huge psychological change for Riley, and insinuates that her being able to experience these mixed emotions has contributed to her growing up and becoming more mature. Before we start analysing this movie, we got to pick one theory. We've got to pick one theory of emotion to work with. We've got some great theories to choose from, such as the James Lange theory, the Cannon-Bard theory, the Schachter Singer theory, and the other 2-syllable last name, 1-syllable first name ones. Yes! I know James isn't 2-syllable. You know what? I don't need you. Stanley Schachter and Jerome Singer theorized that when you're given a stimuli, there are 2 factors that contribute towards deciding what emotion you feel. These are generally interchangeable, but usually first you'll have a physical response, like sweating or your heart speeding up, and then you'll have a mental response going, oh, I'm sweating, my heart's speeding up, I must be feeling...
I don't feel so good.
Anxious. The reason I'm applying this theory to Inside Out is because it's a little more flexible than the others. And Inside Out can be pretty inconsistent, as great a movie as it is. Early on in the movie, it's established that the emotional responses Riley feels are because the personified emotions are flicking switches at the control panel, and that's why she feels things. But then later on in the movie, we see her experiencing emotions. We see her experiencing physiological responses before the emotions have even reacted. The most notable example of this is when she's in the classroom telling the story about Minnesota, and she starts crying, and there's no one at the control panel, as you can see. Sadness is back there messing up the memory, but unless joy started making her cry, it's all her. What we're discussing today is the concept of mixed emotions and how relevant they are to real life. Within the Schachter Singer theory, there's nothing that explicitly refers to mixed emotions, so I guess we're done here. I'm just kidding. I've only said about 500 words, so I'm going to need to find something else to talk about. God, I love English. The 4 levels of explanation are biological, basic psychological, personal, and socio-cultural. Any one emotion that Riley experiences should have direct correlation with any and all of these things. One memory that Riley remembers is one that she affectionately refers to as that time in the car. When Riley remembers the memory, she smiles. Smiling is an example of a hardwired biological instinct. It's a form of non-verbal communication, insinuating complacency and peace, and it's the universal symbol of happiness. Psychologically, recalling the memory as she did and talking about it would cause her brain to secrete a rush of serotonin, just as it did when the memory actually occurred, which is why it's a cool dude memory. You alright? Alright. On a personal level, at least for the first act of the film, Riley tends to think of these happy memories as not a way to distract herself from what's going on, but a way to cheer herself up. It's a cool little coping mechanism. It's a bit of bunky terminology for you kids. When she's discussing this memory with her mother, she laughs, which is both a physical response and a socio-cultural response because mum then laughs as well. The joy of the memory is spread. Happy day. The closest thing that could represent mixed emotions within the Schachter Singer theory is the concept of emotional misinterpretation. I'm going to change my pants. See, the problem with having to draw emotional inferences from physical responses is sometimes you can be wrong. I'd like to cite from a really interesting experiment done by psychologists Donald G. Dutton and Arthur P. Aaron called the Misattribution of Arousal Study. This experiment was conducted on 2 bridges, one shaky suspension bridge over a large chasm and one relatively stable bridge over a smaller chasm. The subjects of the experiment were men crossing these bridges, varying in shape, size, smell, funky. In the middle of these two bridges was a very attractive scientist. I'm gonna hope that the picture I put here is really funny. And this attractive scientist had a survey for the men to fill out. The survey consisted of a few misleading normal questions, and then the very last question had a picture of a woman covering half her face with her hand. And the last question was for the man to make up a backstory as to why this girl was in this position. After the survey, the woman wrote her number down on the corner of the paper, tore it off, gave it to the man, and said that if they would like, they could call her back for some follow-up on the study. Wink, wink. She was probably talking about sex. What the survey found is the men on the shakier bridge were 37% more likely to call that number, and generally came up with more sexually provocative or romantically inspired stories as to why the woman was covering half of her face, in a very insert pop culture reference here like fashion. What Aaron and Dutton drew from this experiment is that the men that were on the shaky bridge probably had their heart pounding, they were sweating, and when they saw this cute girl, their brain attributed these physical responses to being in love rather than being afraid of falling to your death on a really shaky bridge over a chasm. This could, moonwalk. This could be a representation of mixed emotion, seeing as how technically there are two emotions in play on the one experience, but unfortunately, I don't believe this is what the creators of Inside Out were going for. Inside Out is a fantastic film, and as a resource for finding out the way the brain works, especially for children, I'd highly recommend it. However, the concept of mixed emotions does not hold up, specifically to the theory I'm using, and in my opinion is one of the weaker parts of the movie.